So Ford India has officially announced that it will cease all production of new cars in India, and that is a sad, sad day for everybody, for the auto industry, for the buyers, and for everybody in general. But before we get to what's going to be next for, well, Ford customers or Ford employees or everybody who owns a Ford right now, let's have a quick look at their 5 greatest hits in India. Now, obviously, we have to start off with the Icon because that's the first one that became, well, for the lack of a better word, iconic. Now, it was a chassis that really redefined what dynamics was in that era. A punchy 1.6 liter engine. Yes, it did have a 1.32, but that 1.6 row cam was something that enthusiasts loved. And in general, it became a very successful independent first product for Ford India. And for that reason, I think it's the best car to start off this list with. Now, before the Fortuner came to rule the roost in the segment that it is currently in, the king of the hill was, of course, the Ford Endeavour. And yes, it did attract some non-savory elements, but it was the biggest, baddest SUV that you could buy. And with that Ford badge, it was cool. It was supposed to be called the Everest, and that's why you have those mountain range motifs in the back on the wheel cover. Of course, it went through a couple of generations, and the absolute highlight was that 3.2 liter engine that we sadly didn't get in the recent past. The Ford Figo was special in more than one way. It was one of the first Fords that I drove as an automotive journalist, and that's why it's important to me, because I was really drawn to that red dashboard on the first generation Figo. It was a cool car. Again, like most Fords, it redefined what dynamics in a particular segment were really all about. And it had a petrol and a diesel engine. It had a lot of takers, and some people still swear by it, and that's why it's on our top 5 list. The Fiesta. Well, of course, the most popular one of the lot was the Fiesta S, which all of us still absolutely swoon over, and one of our colleagues at PowerDrift actually drives one as his daily. But even in general, the Fiesta, again, like the Figo, like the Icon before, it redefined what dynamics was in terms of driving pleasure. Again, petrol, diesel engines, a whole bunch of space in the back. It was a great car for its time. The second generation Fiesta didn't really do very well, but I had one as a long-termer back in the day, and trust me, it was such a cool car to live with. And of course, last but not least, it's the EcoSport. It wasn't the first subcompact sub-4 meter SUV in India. That was the Premier Rio, but this was the first one that worked. It was the first one that actually made everybody sit up and notice, and every single automaker after that was drawn to that formula that Ford absolutely nailed and perfected back in the day. You remember the long waiting periods? That wasn't the thing. They were booked like crazy, people bought them like crazy, and people still drive them and swear by them. And again, like everything else that Ford has done, absolutely phenomenal in the way they drive. Right, so now that we've talked about their greatest hits, let's talk about why we are really making this video. Ford's future in India is, for all intents and purposes, nearly over. All locally manufactured cars will cease production, which means we won't have the Figo anymore, or the Aspire, or the Endeavour, and yes, even that EcoSport, which is a popular car, or which was popular until very recently, will now cease to be produced in India. Now that includes the Ford EcoSport facelift, which was due any minute. It was literally a couple of weeks away, and that was something that I was really looking forward to drive. Sadly, all of it is gone. What Ford will continue to sell in India in the near future will be the Mustang, which incidentally we haven't seen in showrooms for a long time now because we've not got the facelift version in India, and things like the Ranger, which are again something that's expected to come to India soon, which is of course a pickup truck. Ford also said that they might introduce the Mustang Mach-E in India. Now, I really don't know what to make of this. Is there even a market for Ford to exist in India with just these 2 or 3 halo products? Well, that's something that remains to be seen. That said, what is really sad is the fact that the dealers would be really badly affected, because at the end of the day, it's a livelihood that's being taken away from them. Now, of course, something that everybody will be concerned about is getting spares and service for their cars, and Ford has promised that they will continue to have support for both service official service and for spares in India. And in any case, legally they are required to have spares available to customers for a certain number of years. So I don't think that there will be a problem with spares, especially for a car that's as popular as, say, like an EcoSport or an Endeavour, or even the Figo and the Aspire for that matter. What happens to their India business? So that's the big thing. Dealers obviously will get affected really badly, and that's a really sad thing to happen. But the India business in general, well, they'll continue to make engines from one of their factories for export till about the first half of 2022. But after that, even that engine manufacturing will shut down. So it's an absolute no-go for Ford in India, and that's really sad. And that's, I think, happened, or it's sort of sped up, especially after the talks with Mahindra completely broke down and any sign of a joint venture was completely thrown into the bin. So what really happens to Ford India's business today? Well, in the near future, something called the Business Solutions team will expand, and they already employ about 11,000 people, and Ford is actually set to expand that employment figure. But in terms of general businesses, other businesses like manufacturing, etc., everything comes to a complete halt. Look, it's not really surprising. Ford has had losses of about $2 billion in the last 10 years, even after huge investments in India. And I mean, the cars have been selling, but they've still been making these massive losses. So clearly somewhere there has been a disconnect. The Indian audiences clearly haven't bought enough cars from Ford for them to stay on and stick on. This is, of course, a sad day. Whenever any automaker leaves, General Motors, for example, and Ford now, whenever a big automaker leaves, it's a sad day for the Indian automotive industry, and this will be something that's going to be remembered. And it's not a good thing for Ford or for the general automotive industry or for the manufacturing sector in India. That said, we do have some great memories of Ford in India, and we've driven some fantastic cars. So maybe we'll talk about some of our memories in a coming video soon. Till then, thank you for watching. Stay tuned to more PowerDrift videos. Subscribe as usual, hit the bell icon, and we'll see you soon.